Mabuhay, everyone. This is Reverend Reg, and today is actually July 14, 2021, and it's 10:10 here in Manila, Philippines. So, I've always been passionate about getting LGBTQ plus people to guest in my show. And I'm very blessed because today I have one of my colleagues who's a life coach and a metaphysical minister to share with us her thoughts on a lot of the things that's happening right now, her personal life, her professional life. And just to give you all a brief background of our guest, let me just share that Kim Erwin is a spiritual teacher, healer, Usui Holy Fire Reiki master, light worker, claircognizant, clairsentient, clairvoyant, and she also has a business called Kim's Healing Corner, and she offers Reiki sessions, Reiki classes, meditation classes, and spiritual gatherings online and in person. Her blog site called Raising Consciousness, it's because she has this passion to share about spiritual wisdom that she has gathered over her life's journey and hopes that others may learn, grow, and connect with Source through it. And she's also working on her book, Bless Them, Change Me, about 16 months she spent in federal prison. And this book has been about 8 years in the making, which has led to her writing many books as her initial project has morphed into many different avenues. So, anyway, without further ado, let me welcome and let's give her a round of applause, please. Hi, mabuhay, Kim. How are you today?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Awesome. I'm doing great. And, before we start, I want to invite everyone to, just be in that meditative mode and let's reflect on something from Reverend Shirley's book. It's a really nice book that I recommend to all of you. So, gently close your eyes, take a deep breath in and out. Take a deep breath in and out. Take a deep breath in and out. All right. So today, I'm gonna pull an inspiration from Reverend Shirley Lawson's book, Spiritual Golden Spiritual Nuggets, and it's the Nugget 39. Transformation does not change the real self. Transformation happens when old thoughts are released, new thoughts are embraced, and the real you shines through. So, what's your take on it, Kim?
I never used to think that way either. So I like that how she shared that because I always used to think that I had to become somebody else or I had to be somebody else. I didn't realize that I only had to become aware of who I am, of
Yeah,
my divine self, and that's a big deal.
beautiful.
That's I think one of the turning points of grasping the metaphysical sense of life, I guess.
Yeah, indeed. And Kim, I love that you're writing your book. And especially, we know that it's not easy to write a book. There are painful parts when we talk about writing a book from your life's journey,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to LGBTQIA topics. There's this self introspection process that you go through. And then there's also another layer where you have to deal with the community
Hmm.
in terms of your self acceptance. Because in the past, when we weren't aware of metaphysics, a lot of us were actually delving into blame and complaining about what's happening around us. But like what your book said, bless them, change me.
Hmm.
So now that you're in the process of weaving the whole book, please tell us more about it.
Well, I I used to practice law. I was an attorney, and I got into a little. I was really into self. It was a period of time I was going through my divorce, and my father had passed, and my sister had passed, all within like 6 months. and my life just my reaction, my neurotic reaction to life was to get involved in some things that I wasn't supposed to be doing as a lawyer, and after a period of time, I was putting money in my account that didn't belong in my account, and after a period of time, it struck me that I was doing that. It was like it was almost a sense of so detached from self because of all the things that were going on in life that I didn't even realize the things that I was engaging in. Anyway, bottom line is I turned myself in. I didn't get caught. I actually went and said, "I'm doing this and I can't make it right. What should I do?" And I went to a lawyer and he says, "Put your head in the sand and wait for him to catch you or go turn yourself in." So I turned myself in, and that resulted in me being sent to federal prison for 16 months. And I grew up a very non criminal life and not around folks that had criminal history or, I was a lawyer and I represented criminals in court, people who committed crimes, but I was just not familiar with that type of lifestyle. So I went to prison as I was a lawyer, and I went to prison, and I just was out of place. I was so out of place, and it was very very difficult because I had actually been a police officer in the past as well. So I associated in prison with the guards more than I did
Mhm,
with the
mhm.
inmates. Well, that doesn't go over well when you're an inmate because then you're a snitch and bad things happen. So it was a struggle. And probably 99% of my time, I walked around saying to myself, bless them, change me. Because I was really judgmental and I was miserable, but I was mean inside to them. So all I could think of, and I don't even know where I came up with it, but it was bless them, change me. Bless them, change me. And that was my saying the whole time I was there. So that's what I
Amazing.
titled my book.
Ki- I'm so happy that you're talking about this because it's a very healing process for a lot of people. When we confront our shadows, it's one of the hardest things to do in life. And I didn't even expect that you're gonna talk about that in the show. So I know that whatever it is that happened in the past is just part of your evolutionary process.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you actually learn from that experience? Because the motivation might have come from a very fearful place, because
Mm-hmm.
nobody is able to do something like that if they weren't feeling and dwelling on fear in the first place.
Right, right. Well,
So
I
go ahead.
it was the biggest lesson in my life. I mean, it's funny because I don't know, a couple months ago, I got on a dating site, and this woman contacted me, and she was asking me what I do. But she was all impressed and wanting to date a lawyer, right? Well, I
Yeah.
don't practice law anymore. So I was explaining this to her, and she got really mean. She was, I don't even remember the name she was calling me. And I'm like, I wouldn't trade that experience and what I've done in my life, my past, for anything in the world because I would not be who I am today without all that. And today I happen to think, well, I'm pretty awesome, but
Yeah.
I just don't, there's no way I would trade it because I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in today at all. I wouldn't know the things I know. I wouldn't understand. Um, just the understanding is worth it all.
Thank you for
Understanding.
sharing that, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
It's true what you mentioned, that you wouldn't be the whole person that you are today if not for that experience of your shadow side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that people can go into that judgmental mode when we all know that we all have a shadow side.
Right,
And
right.
honestly, for me, I think that the reason why the shadow side is brought up in this lifetime is to keep us all humble and interdependent.
Mm-hmm.
I've always believed that, so that um, Jesus Christ was saying, you should be the first one to cast the stone if you're the type of person who has never made any
Right.
errors.
And that wouldn't be anybody. Right.
I'm very proud of you for actually talking about it. People are not able to easily, gracefully, and have that acceptance of themselves when they're brought into a lot of situation where guilt and shame is actually very prominent in their
Right.
psyche.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for saying that, King, and thank you for sharing that. By the way, Dr. Rogusman is watching from Manila.
Hi.
So, wow, Kim, I'm happy. And gosh, you're very smart to be able to finish law school. It's one of the toughest courses to finish.
Mm-hmm.
And not only did you finish law school, but it seems to me that you've also acquired a lot of knowledge over time because you got into metaphysics, you got into holy fire reiki, and many other things that will actually expand your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So please share more about it because it's one of the things that I really want to get across my audience. I encourage everyone to keep learning, growing, and expanding their perspective.
Right, right. Well, it's very exciting. Every day is very exciting. I wake up excited. Um, what am I going to learn today? What, you know, I have some affirmations I do in the morning, and one of them is I declare and affirm that this day I live in mystical oneness with God. And it's not easy, but I start my day that way, and it just makes it so exciting. And everything is new, and everything just seems to just be amazing. I don't know how else to explain it. Uh, Learning things like today, it's neat to be excited, alive today in this period of time in Earth's
Mm,
history. It's very exciting, and a lot of things are happening. Um, and I'm just absorbing it all. There's so much, and just so much information coming in, and it's just exciting to me. Just for instance, um, uh, like let's see. Okay, so I don't even know an example that I can think of off the top of my head. But at work today, I work 3 days a week. I work as a dog bather at a groomer shop because I
mm, mm,
love dogs. And um, my boss was telling me she went to her chiropractor and did this water thing where she put her feet in some water, and she just showed me. She said to put this black thing in, it takes the metals out of your body into the through your feet into the water. And I was like, well, that's
mm,
neat. I said, I think it's really exciting because we're living in a time where we get to learn all the things that humans at one point probably used to do to stay connected to source. And now we're just so disconnected from source that we forget all those exciting things. We forget that energy is everywhere and how it affects us, and we just forget how connected we are. We forget who we are. So it's
yeah.
exciting to know who we
Thank you for sharing that, Kim. It's a beautiful thing that you mentioned that because here in the Philippines, we also practice that foot detox.
Oh, you do?
So yeah, we do have that food and foot detox here in the clinic, and it's also one of the things my co-doctors and I used to
Oh,
do
nice.
when we were still operating together. Because when the COVID happened, the regular operations we had to postpone all of that and then think of new ways to deal with our services
Right.
and be able to transfer things online. So how are you doing right now? Are you also able to transfer your services online after the pandemic, after the lockdowns?
Yeah, yeah. I've been doing I do a lot of distance Reiki online, and then um I do some meditations online with friends. I don't do a whole lot online, but I'm not real tech savvy. I'm a little tech savvy. I can get where I need to go, but That's about it.
Yeah, amazing. So at least you're able to transfer your services online, and Reiki is actually one of the most powerful and most transformative forms of healing modality that I have encountered myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I have mentioned this last week, and I want to emphasize it again that it's one of the most, I think the strength of Reiki is in its gentleness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Self forgiveness is one of the toughest healing things a person must go through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy that you're practicing Reiki because, like what my teacher said, Reiki is an intelligent energy. If you
Mm-hmm.
need forgiveness, it will direct the energy towards forgiveness and release.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need more enthusiasm, it also has the capacity to do that so that you're able to get out of the routinary emotion of going about your daily business into that space where you're motivated, uplifted, and inspired. Because I think earlier, that process that you were going through, where you're actually just constantly learning and growing, it's
Mm-hmm.
very, very important to uh, know and be able to absorb it. So
Mm-hmm.
please talk more about it, because one of the things that I really promote to people is that every single day of your life, you have to find space for doing what you love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you, in your case, you love dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So please tell us more about it, because it's one of the most rejuvenating forms of giving. You know, it's like you're giving yourself into taking care of the dogs, but it's also giving back to you amplified energy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that feeling of expansion in your heart. So please talk more about it.
Okay. So mostly I do Reiki on people, but I have been doing Reiki with my pets. And initially, the energy when I would put my hands on my dogs, they would go real fast, just go away. And and after I don't know about probably took a year. Now they just lay and they let me just touch and hold my hands, and they actually snore and snort and make loving noises now. They used to run from it, but I think only because it wasn't familiar to them. So my goal, actually, maybe I shouldn't say my goal, but I think one of my callings is what I'm being nudged towards is doing Reiki for dogs, and I've been throwing that around in my head a lot lately. My dog Lily, she's laying right here. She had twice I've done Reiki on her, and she's had something wrong with her, and within a day it's gone. So I'm very excited that Reiki does its job for her. It brings. She's 12, so she's an older dog. And then at work, I it's
Mhm.
fun at work because I just bathe dogs. You know, I love it. I spend time with them. I get the dog and I'm like, what's its name? And I talk to, and they're all scared when they come in, just frightened. They're so frightened, and I just love on them and get them in the tub, and I talk to them. You know, I make eye contact. We have a whole conversation. I let them know who I am, and I'm not there to hurt them. I don't do my Reiki at work, but I just, and then sometimes my one of the groomers will say, "This dog's mean. Here's a muzzle." And I'll come back afterwards. Here's the muzzle. And she's like, what'd you do? Talk Jesus to him? I said, no, no. I just get on their level. I just associate with them. You know, they're
Oh,
mostly scared. They're just scared. They don't know what's going on. I'm just
yeah.
the little comforter, and I get them clean.
Amazing, Kim. It's such a beautiful thing that you talked about, because, you know, a lot of people in my audience, they do love dogs, and our dogs are adorable in my mom's place. And my cousin actually is very much into dogs. And, you know, in the beginning, we weren't really into dogs, but because they're so cute, you can't just really,
Right.
neglect them.
Right.
So, especially when they're babies.
Oh, they demand more attention than a human child. I was telling my mom that today. I said they need me more than my kids ever needed me. They need my attention, all of me, more than my kids. She's like, I know.
Awesome. So cute, Kim. And another thing that I want to bring up, because both of us are into metaphysics, and we know that the power of caring for another person, another plant, another animal, it's also something that expands our health and
Hmm.
well-being. So please talk more about it, because I think it's one of the best antidepressants,
Oh
caring
yeah.
for somebody else.
Um, well, I can really speak to that subject. Um, I'm extremely healthy right now. I've been healthy, probably super healthy for a couple years. I've lost a lot of weight. Um, in fact, when I see people, they're like, "Are you sick? Why are you so skinny?" And I'm like, "Can't I just be healthy?" um, and it's not anything I personally do, but I'm well. I always tell everybody it's spiritual. It's not me. God. I'm more directed to eat when I don't know how to explain it. It just comes naturally when I'm taking care of when I'm out of ego. I guess when I'm out of ego, uh, life just seems to work physically, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally for me. There was a period of time when I was on. Well, we spoke earlier when I before I went to prison. I was on. I didn't tell you this. I was on 12 different mental health medications through the VA. I go to the VA. I'm a vet as well, and I was so medicated that I wasn't thinking. I
Mm,
would drool.
mm,
I would potty myself. It was horrible. For about a year, I was on all these medicines, and I went to prison on those, but they don't allow you any of them, so they just took me off all of them at once. But which is ultimately good. But um, so I don't need any of that anymore. I
mm.
really don't get headaches. I don't, a lot of things. I don't know. It just
Yeah,
works. Life just works when you're connected. It just works.
amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Kim, because we know that when someone is heavily medicated, there's a lot of pain emotionally.
Hmm.
Because even with the evolution of mental health, there's still that space where now people are recognizing the value of emotional health,
Hmm. Hmm.
that you might have right thinking, but the emotions may not be exactly in alignment with what's happening in your mind. And that's why the inner work is so important. Meditation is so important.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, having mentioned all that, Kim, I'm very happy that you're bravely talking about this for others to benefit, because we know that when it comes to understanding the inner workings of the mind, it's one of the toughest things to confront,
Hmm.
especially if you have negative thought and feeling patterns. We know as metaphysicians that we have to carefully guard our thoughts and feelings, because
Hmm.
whatever it is that's happening in the internal, it will sooner or later manifest as the physical. It's a good thing if you're dwelling on something delightful, progressive, and something that will benefit you and others. But uh, if it's coming from a dark place, so
Hmm.
to speak,
Hmm.
then you also bring that about. So
Right.
please talk more about the inner workings of the mind and how we need to process our emotions in such a way that will liberate us.
Well, and you mentioned the energy. It is all energy. This is something that I'm still grasping. I think because it's so big. Um, our thoughts. I was just listening to something earlier by Dr. Masters, so I have this right on my mind. Um, our thoughts are energy forms, and when we think something, he was talking about obstacles. We create our own obstacles through our thoughts. Say I want to do this and this and this, but then I still have this thought in my head. You probably really can't do that. It's somewhere in there. It's telling me that you probably really can't do that. So I'm sending that thought out into the universe. It's energy, it's a little bit of energy going out there. And it's not just gonna go away. It's there, it's existing, and it's gonna come back to me. That's what I'm asking for. As if I'm at, because like attracts like. So it's gonna come back like that instead. So it's so important to just get uh and he says you don't just get rid of it. You outgrow these sort of things, that these thoughts and things, through meditation as well. um God grows us through that, so to speak, I guess.
Thank you for sharing that, Kim. And I want to talk more about the LGBTQ psychology, the inner workings of the mind, because I think you have a very strong personality. But like what Dr. Masters was saying, even if you have that willpower
Hmm.
and you don't feel spiritually grounded with what you're doing, then your ego can take over that willpower and it will misdirect you.
Hmm. Hmm.
And one of the things that I think is such a powerful sharing that you have today was talking about the parts where you weren't really proud about yourself, but you still talk about it. Because I noticed for the LGBTQ community, one of my yoga teachers said, I noticed that the LGBTQ community, they have a tendency of lying.
Mm.
And she was saying, I think it's because society has unconsciously imposed to them that they're not safe. So it's a lot easier for the LGBTQ to hide things or to lie because unfortunately, that feeling of not being safe in the world,
Hmm.
it's more convenient for them to just keep it to themselves. And unfortunately, we both know that if you keep things to yourself that are maybe your insecurities will grow. And when your insecurities grow, you make bad decisions.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, do you think that those misguided decisions that you had in the past were they uh, coming from a place of insecurity?
Oh,
I'm just concerned because the LGBTQ we have a lot of that to heal from within us.
hmm absolutely. And I don't think I was even aware that of how insecure, fearful I was living. I wasn't, I was out. I had children. I was married to a woman. At the time, I was practicing law. I was out in the legal community. Um, I would do a booth at Gay Pride every year for my law office and get lots of clients. So,
Mhm.
but I was not. It was all surface. What probably wasn't bad, all bad, but it was all surface. I didn't really start to s evaluate myself as a homosexual until probably 4 years ago. And what I mean evaluate was, I don't think I ever felt okay being a lesbian. I don't think I ever
Mhm.
felt that it was okay to be a lesbian. My family was always accepting. Um, However, things in life, there was a point. I was probably 21. I was attending a church in town, and they excommunicated me when I came out to them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they told me that you are welcome to stay a member of the church as long as you take a vow of celibacy. I said, well, why would I do that? I said, I really ain't got anybody in my life now, but holy smokes, I'm 20 years old. Why? It didn't even seem logical to me. Um, so things like that had occurred throughout my life. I was in the military, and there was a lot of harassment in the military. Um, and I just took it all in. I never really even thought, consciously thought about what I thought about myself as being a lesbian.
Thank you for sharing that, Kim. Because it's so important. Because you mentioned you took it all in, and we know in metaphysics there is such a thing called metacognition. where you actually take yourself out of that internalized conversations, and then you get to ask yourself, why am I thinking this way? Why am I feeling this way? Where did I pick it up? How did I get programmed this way?
Right.
So until you're educated about that line of thinking, you don't really realize how powerful your thoughts are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not enough that your thoughts are powerful, because they have to be wisely directed,
Mm-hmm.
because wisdom uh, also has to be coupled with love,
Right.
so that you're coming up with the benevolent outcome for yourself and others. And if you're not guided with wisdom and love, that's the time we make short sighted decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And thank you for sharing that you have actually grown up as an adult without realizing that you just took it all in. And especially being ostracized by your church is another thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
a very traumatic experience, because all your life growing up as a gay individual, all you ever want to find out, especially if you have some concept of higher power,
Right.
is to be loved,
Right.
accepted, and unconditionally welcomed by that higher power over and over again.
Mm-hmm. I have a story about when I
Uh,
started um, the University of Metaphysics. I hadn't did any research on their perspective of the gay and lesbian community. I didn't know how they were gonna present any of it. And I was going through my lessons, and then Dr. Masters had a lesson on sexuality. I was like, okay, I'm gonna listen to this. I don't know, and it was everything I had learned, and past my shadow work. It was all the good stuff, and I was amazed. I was like, I'm in the right spot because I struggled a long time for didn't understand. I knew inside that my spirit does not have a gender. I knew that inside, but but I did not know that because I need words. I didn't understand I always thought it was wrong. God thought it was wrong, and I didn't understand how it could possibly be wrong and horrible and awful and all these other things that people were saying to me and acting towards me. I knew inside somewhere that didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any sense because I knew I had a spirit, and I knew my spirit wasn't a human running around defined as male or female. I knew that. So it's just a big lesson.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Kim. Especially one of the things that I want to share with you is that, I've always felt, because it was a lot easier for me as a lesbian to live in this time and space reality where I didn't have to get stoned to death for being a lesbian,
Mhm.
or I didn't have to go through any form of physical violence. And for that, I'm very grateful. There's a big part of me where I feel that, because I'm into theocentric psychology,
Mhm.
and we know that when we talk about theocentric psychology, for our listeners who are not aware of it, it's God centered psychology. And what we mean by it is that you are made in the image and likeness of God. And if you just had the opportunity to focus on you being made in the image and likeness of God, whether you like it or not, the greatness of God's power and presence within you will actually express itself through you.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, for the LGBTQ plus community, we have been told many times over that you're a sinner. And
Mhm.
if the dwelling place of your mental and emotional space dwells on you being a sinner, unfortunately, you're going to create stories in your mental space that you're a sinner, which will cost you to,
Yep,
which
and
will
it keeps
actually
you bound.
cause you, by the way, to express.
Right.
And this is the reason why the theocentric psychology classes of Dr. Masters are so important for people to understand,
Mhm.
because in psychology, they even have now what they call positive psychology.
Mhm.
And in University of Metaphysics, we're actually promoting theocentric psychology, God-centered psychology, God's power and presence within you as your self-concept. Can you just imagine, Kim, if both of us grew up with Dr. Master's teaching that God is actually the epitome of our self image
Right.
instead of the sinner consciousness that dwelled in our innermost place of the dwelling, uh, the innermost space that Dr. Masters reminds us
Mm-hmm.
constantly
Mm-hmm.
of. Can you please talk more about it, Kim? Because I'm very sure you understand what I'm saying and you can fully expand on it.
Okay. Ah, I just lost all words. Being okay, it sent me here, and I don't know why it sent me here, but this is what I'm going to talk about. In some of Dr. Master's lessons, he talks of how we are all one. We're all creator, the creator, God, source, and we're all expressions and manifestations, and just different. Just and God chose to have each of our. He's chosen each experience that we're each gonna have. If that makes sense. Every experience that I'm having, God chose that to have through me and not anybody else. So we're all pretty, and He chose the experiences through you to have those experiences that nobody else is able to offer. God, those to God from source. I don't know. It's just amazing to me. It's just completely amazing that I am actually an expression of God. That God is, and despite my human neurotic self, God still expresses through me. And I didn't understand that for so long. Probably because of being gay, lesbian, gay and lesbian. Probably because of that, because I didn't know that. Well, I sure didn't think after everybody telling me how much God hated gay people that God would not be I would not be an expression of God by any means. If God hates me.
Yeah.
So that did, and it just it's I wish that everybody could understand this, especially those in our community, because it's so it's like comforting and warm, and it's like being home, and my sexuality today. I mean, I don't even talk about it. It's not even it's a non-issue. I mean, I don't. I don't. Maybe I don't. I'm not out and around enough. I don't know, but it never comes up. It's not like a thing anymore. But when I was growing up and coming out and all that, it was always a thing. It was always a thing, and maybe that was something I was creating in my head too. I don't know.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Kim, because, I also felt that way. And that's why I told you when we were on backstage that it kind of feels like both of us, you're like an aunt from from the States. I'm all over here. I'm all the way here in the Philippines and we're having a reunion right now,
Right.
something like that. So it's true because you don't really know if it was something that was messing with your head all your growing up years because
Mhm.
meditation wasn't really taught us, especially I came from an all girls Roman Catholic school and I'm not sure if that was your growing environment. Was that the type of school you grew into?
No, no, it wasn't. I actually grew up in a family that wasn't religious, but I would I always any opportunity, friends, anybody who would go to church in the neighborhood, a school bus would come through on Sunday mornings and pick kids up. I would hop on the bus. I was always going. I was always wanting to learn about God. So that
Mm-hmm.
I was, but I didn't grow up in any specific religion. I was always just, I'll go to that church. And I'd go to church camps in the summer. My mom's like, I don't know. My friends wouldn't even go with me. I would just go. It was just something that I wanted to learn. It was like I needed to know all this.
Yeah.
So,
And probably, if you had that kind of devotion, you would probably end up as an altar boy at that time.
right, right.
because I also understand where you're coming from. Because growing up, I also wanted to have a spiritual mentor, which I did not see in my environment at that time. So it's very liberating for me as an adult to be exposed to various spiritual teachers and to
Mm-hmm.
have teachers tell me that I am made in the image and likeness of God and that I should focus on God's greatness within me and that
Mm-hmm.
I should let go of all thoughts about suffering and being a sinner because that isn't part of God's divine plan for me.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's a preparation process for you to be successful, but being a sinner and, you know, staying stuck in the concept that you're constantly sinning is really not part of God's divine plan for me, especially the concept of suffering,
Mm-hmm.
which psychologically speaking, if you had just changed the word suffering into preparation, a
Mm-hmm.
form of spiritual and material preparation for your good to come to pass, it would have taken a lot of the drama away
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of the experience. So, Kim, please share because I know that as you were going through the bachelor's degree for University of Metaphysics, a lot of the being in tune with God's power and presence within you, it's a process.
Oh yeah.
And it's a lot of weeding out of all forms of limited thinking about God that you're going to have to release if you fully want to immerse yourself and embody the metaphysical perspective on God's power and presence within us. Please talk more about it. And how can one develop a personal relationship with that God within?
The way that I did it was meditation. I think that is the, well, that's the only way. And maybe that's limiting to say. Um, and I think Dr. Masters may even teach it that way too. But I think meditation is the only. Well, that's how we get. That's how we know God. So without meditating, you know, the what I find a neat lesson that I learned is that the more you meditate and connect with source, the more that will reflect in your outer life. Like, so I'm spending 30 minutes to an hour in the morning meditating. Um, and it feels good. It's always wonderful. It's like the best way to start the day. And then I go about my business. And because I've spent that little bit of time connected with God, the values of God are going to reflect through me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
So
And
and that's it was it's a slow process. I would have loved to have been woken up, awake, immediately. But it's a process because I've spent 55 years learning how to not go there, and now
yeah,
I have to undo all that.
thank you for sharing that, uh, Kim, because first we learned about how to be separated from God in
Yeah.
in most fundamentalist religion, they're going to tell you that you're separate from God.
Hmm.
And that's very contrary to what we learned in University of Metaphysics,
Hmm.
which tells us that the power and presence of God that created you is within you.
Hmm.
So your expression will come from a very different
Right.
space of intensity and in terms of value system because it's so different when you know that you're expressing greatness compared to you're expressing the sinner consciousness.
Right. Right.
And when I talk about consciousness here, we're talking about the programmings that you've had growing up. And I also want to shine the spotlight on Dr. Rogesman and Coco Lux, who just said, "Hello, Reverend Reg. You work very hard. I enjoy your interview." So thank you, Kim,
Yes.
for talking about what you're sharing. Keep up the great work. So another thing that Dr. Rogesman mentioned, meditation is the way where we know God. It is the best way to start the day. When you connect with God, the values of God is gonna be reflected back to you. This is a very enlightening
Oh,
interview. So
thank you.
awesome. So, Coco, thank you for bringing it up because I've always mentioned to my friends that quality and the authenticity of my interviews are more important to me
Right.
than getting the getting the quantity immediately of viewers,
Right.
because I feel that there's a powerful transformative healing experience for me, the one I'm interviewing, and also the viewers that are connecting with us.
Hmm.
That's why I keep doing this. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Yes.
And at the same time, it's so important to talk about these things because, Kim, you know how many people complain that they don't have jobs because they're LGBTQ and their bosses don't like LGBTQ people going to work.
Hmm.
So it's something that is very important to me because, if you don't go through that space where you know that God is within you, you're
Hmm.
always going to be stuck in situations where you're going to have to please people.
Hmm.
And you wouldn't be able to do the things that you actually would love to do if you're
Right.
constantly trying to impress other people. And it's just something that is very important to me because I know that I cannot lead the way if you're not coming from your authentic
Right.
space. So
Hmm.
please talk more about it, Kim, because definitely the being a lawyer is a very leadership type of role in the community.
Right.
It's
Right.
leadership oriented. Go ahead, please.
Um, I had a few thoughts while you're talking. I'm gonna go back a little bit. Um, I had my kids are 17, 18, and 19 right now. And one of my oldest daughter's friends, he was asking me if I would go to church with him on Sunday. This is about a month ago. I said, I would love to. I said, can you tell me a little about it? Tell me a little Tim, about the things that are going to go on. And we were talking and we were talking about God and everything was good. And then I don't even remember how he said it, but then he said that, oh, I was telling him how we were divine, that we were divine. And he says, oh no, we are all have original sin. Oh, and it broke my heart. It really broke my heart. It's like, oh, you really, and I thought so poorly about myself. I thought I wasn't raised Catholic. I think that's a Catholic, the
Yeah.
original sin. I don't know. Anyway, it broke my heart to think that just starting off, they're thinking somebody who's not awake. I guess I'll use those terms. That just right from the get go, they're a sinner. They're not right with God. And when he said that to me, it broke my heart. It made me so sad to think that 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 people really think that God really doesn't think highly of them. It breaks my heart because God can't think any other way about us because we are part of God. You know,
Yes.
so there's no way that it it didn't calculate to me. It just makes me sad that we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of people to teach and a lot to learn still, us even, but I, that's how I look at it. Is I just have a lot of people to teach. I have a lot of people to reach. Um, I always I always think of myself as uh, it came to me in meditation one time. I'm a lighthouse for my tribe. And I
Mm-hmm.
struggle a little bit with who my tribe is because I want to move to Sedona really bad. Um, have you been to Sedona? Have you been out of the Philippines yet? Have you been to Sedona?
Not yet, but I really would love to go
Oh
there.
my goodness, it is glorious. I've never been to a place where when we got there and I went and we got to our hotel. It was a house actually, and I went to meditate and just from the get go met the connection. Thank you. Um, was amazing, just amazing. Just it was like all I had to do. I didn't have to even like do my breathing first. Typically when I go into meditation, I'll breathe through my energy centers and get focused, and I didn't have to do any of that. And it was just I was connected, and I was like, how can anybody not be any want to be anywhere else but here?
Yeah,
Is what I
yeah.
think of Sedona. It was, yeah, it was. I don't know.
Thank you for sharing, Kim. I love that you just mentioned that you're a lighthouse for your tribe because honestly, I also feel that way. I don't have to please people who don't resonate with what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
I respect their space if they need to be there, but I also value my mission. I
Hmm.
I have
Right.
that in my head that everybody has a mission,
Right.
and that particular mission is something all of us are meant to find out for ourselves because you're going to feel a deep inner calling for it. Is that how you feel about your day, Kim? Because every day, you know, Coco, the reason why I have that kind of feeling, it's because that's how I feel. I'm on a mission, and it's the thing that gives me the enthusiasm and the energy and the devotion to keep doing what I'm doing.
Hmm. Hmm. That's a great perspective. I just I guess I just I'm just always excited about it. I'm just always excited about life and what I can offer somebody else. I feel like I've had so many experiences. And I'll sit down and talk to somebody that I've not known, and I'm telling them a little bit and a little bit, and I've done this and that, and they're like, "What? How'd you do so much?" I said, "Well, I really think my experiences were only to bring me to who I am today. That was the only reason I had all those. They're like, you're too smart. You did all these things. How could you do all that? It's not. It wasn't about being smart really at all. It was just about the experience in itself, I guess. I don't know if I addressed what we were talking about, but that's where I went.
But Kim, I love that they brought it up because I think whatever it is that they were saying that you were very smart, it has to do with the evolutionary process of the infinite intelligence within you.
Right.
And at the same time, one of the things that's very important for me to keep reminding myself is that I'm not only a head brain, intelligent, rational thinking being, I'm also an emotional
Right.
being, which I have to acknowledge because without acknowledging the love that is in me and also in other people, it's very difficult to come to the space where being interdependent is a natural thing for all of us human beings to do.
Hmm.
As spiritual beings having a human
Exactly. I
experience.
say that all. That's my favorite. That's exactly my favorite line. A human being having a spiritual being having a human experience. Yeah. And when that makes sense, I think it changes your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kim. And I know we talked a lot about many different things, and I just want to highlight what Coco said. The negative hold dogma has on some, there is no separation. We
Hmm.
live in a world that we are all creating. The right mind can change it. Meditation is important, and there are so many benefits. Yes, it's true. And,
Absolutely.
it's very important to acknowledge that about ourselves and release that
Right.
uh, dogma because it's the thing that limits us the most because
Yes. Yes.
it makes us feel uh, that are we socially acceptable when
Hmm.
in truth the first thing that we have to gauge is are we acceptable to our own value system
Right. Right.
because being socially acceptable is a lot easier to deal with if you already have fully accepted yourself as a spiritual being having a
Right.
human experience and coming from the perspective that we are made in the image and likeness of God and not from the ego self.
Right. Right. You had mentioned emotions. I want to touch on
Yeah,
this.
go ahead.
It's talking to me about it. Um, Emotions. Uh, I used to be pretty ran by emotions, and I'm getting really pretty good at them now. Because I used to, if I'd get angry, I mean, I would either instantly, I would go in or I would lash out. That was my anger reaction in the past. Now, if I'm angry, okay, yes, I'm feeling angry because of whatever situation is disturbing me, but I don't have to. I don't have to do anything with it. I can let it come, and I can let it go. A lot of emotions, I really had a hard time with a lot of emotions. Blame, guilt, shame, and all inner things, all inner, and I'd get really upset and cry, and and I've learned to not. I don't have to attach to them. And the emotion comes up, I don't have to just grab it and let it take me wherever it wants to go. So
Yeah.
today I can go, okay, yes, oh, it's intense. Where am I? I'm feeling it, but it's not me. I don't have to own it. I can feel it, and and that's something I think that's big for our community too, because I held on to a lot of emotion, and I owned it, and I let it run my life, and rather than God running my life, I let my emotions run my life.
Thank you for sharing that, Kim, because I think one of the things that we have to accept is that when we talk about being holy, because it's another identifier that religion has
Mm-hmm.
imposed on most people, is what you're doing holy.
Right.
So people have this perspective that this holy thing, it has to be sacred.
Right.
But what it actually means metaphysically is, are you fully integrated?
Right.
Is your value system integrated in what you're doing? And holy doesn't mean for us in metaphysics being dogmatic.
Right.
It just means that you're a constantly evolving soul, and that at every level of your evolution, you have to be fully integrated into that experience so that you can embody it,
Right. Embody.
whatever that uh, God power and presence within you is expressing at that stage in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm very sure, Kim, that how you're expressing yourself now is very different compared to how you were expressing yourself a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Probably even a year ago, or maybe even 6
Mm-hmm.
months ago. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, Kim, are there any last words for us, especially what particular perspective do you really want us to take action on? Because I always encourage my viewers, you have to take one perspective and immediately act upon it, because it's the only way you're going to make the first change and the next change. And
Uh-huh.
before you know it, you've made a lot of changes in your life, and your life shifts rather dynamically because of that one decision.
Right. Right. When you said that, the thought that came to my head is be the light that you are. I don't know if that's really perspective, but just be the light that you are. Um, March to your own drum. Um, be present. I don't know.
Thank you for sharing that, Kim. It's a very powerful statement to be the light that you are, to march to your own drum, because it's exactly what I'm doing now.
Oh,
And
there
I realize that the more you do it, the more you are confident about your choices.
you go.
And also, your fearlessness activates because you're living from your heart space.
Right. Right.
So, anyway, Kim, thank you so much for your
Oh,
time. I
thank
trust
you for
that
having
a lot
me.
of people are going to connect with you. If ever they would like to talk to you, have your sessions for Reiki or your meditations, where can they find you?
Okay, I my email is Kim's Healing Corner at gmail.com, and I have a blog. Not sure how you get to it. Well, I'm on Facebook. It's Kim Erwin on Facebook. There's a picture of me. You can find me on there. And then I have my blog is called Raising Consciousness. No, I've not done a search for it yet, so it's a WordPress blog.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
All
have
right.
a phone number too.
Mhm.
It's 402-714-4411. I really appreciate you, Rev Reg. I'm so excited that I got to meet you.
Yeah, me too. And I'm very happy that you're sharing this. Please check the number if it's correct.
It's not seven. I see 402 714 4411.
All right. I hope I got it right this time.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Awesome. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
Coco was saying awesome.
Thank you,
You all
Coco.
have a great
Thank
night,
you.
day.
You, honey.
Awesome. So
Love
are
you.
you, uh, Coco, based here in Manila, Philippines, or are you based somewhere else? Let us know where you are. All right.
I,
So anyway, thank you so much, Kim, and I really had a great time. I hope that you can be part of the International Metaphysical Ministry LGBTQ community. So
absolutely.
it's a Facebook group,
Well, we're connected now.
Louisiana. All right.
You're
Coco
not going
is
to get
in
rid of me.
Louisiana. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So Satnam, everyone. And Satnam actually means truth is my name. And it's coming from the space where you're living from your full potential, you're living from your divine self. And it's a very important thing for me to share with everyone because a lot of the dynamic changes I experienced came from understanding that God is within me, God is in other people, God is in everything, and that I don't have to live in fear about being a sinner or things like that, feeling separated from God because the one who made us actually lives within us. And if we literally talk to that God power and presence within, and if we set our thoughts on the greatness of God within us, a lot of the things that we would like to experience will demonstrate, especially if our intentions are pure. So I think that's exactly what Kim is sharing earlier as well, to be the light that you are and march to the beat of your own drum. So I trust that I'll have you all again tomorrow for another episode of Perspective. Remember, put things in perspective because your perspective shapes your reality. Mabuhay everyone and have fun.